What happens when curiosity leaves the conversation? That was the topic we were discussing last week, and we will continue today because it's a topic of very big importance for every leader who wants to master the communication skills in high stakes conversations. We were discussing about curiosity as a leadership act, not as a soft skill. What does that mean? That means that curiosity is also a strategic act that you take when you are coming to a room where you know the stakes are high. So let's continue this conversation. I want to resume from the question from this topic of about what curiosity looks like as a leadership act. What do I mean with that? Leadership curiosity shows up in very specific ways, not as, what do you think? Asked vaguely, but as intentional questions. For example, what is the risk we are not naming here? What would make this decision fail? What assumptions are we all taking for granted? What information would change my mind? Do you see the difference? These are calculated questions in order to unveil maybe some hidden intentions or blind spots that are currently happening in that particular high stakes or difficult conversations. Because, as we have mentioned before, when you are in a high stakes situation, when it is a difficult conversation, the emotions are boiling inside of you. Biologically, we are not so tuned in our listening skills. So we are having not only listening impairment, but also many blind spots because the emotions are boiling inside of us and we can easily get confused. So the questions I just gave you as an example, what is the risk we are not naming here right now against what do you think? There's a big difference because the former is, the latter is not a soft questions. They are courageous ones because they invite truth, not comfort. Do you see the difference? I ask you here now, think about it. Which question are you not asking, even though you know it will change the conversation? Because this is the thing, sometimes we avoid asking questions because we don't want to break the flow of the conversation, even knowing that the conversation flow is not going to the best direction. We avoid asking questions because we don't want to create conflicts. But nevertheless, we need to step out from this position of retreat and step in the position of questioning with curiosity. And why curiosity requires courage? Because curiosity is vulnerable. When you show curiosity, it requires that you might show in that moment that you do not know immediately the answer for something. And that could be something that most leaders, many leaders, don't feel comfortable with. When you have curiosity, it might show to others that you're challenged in your perspectives. And also that you are not hearing the right information and you're not really clear about what's happening. And under pressure, vulnerabilities might feel intuitive, because under pressure, maybe is expected, maybe it's what you believe that is expected from you, that you always have the answer. But that's not the case. We never have always the answers. And especially when the stakes are high, when you're under pressure, you have to be more cautious. Because also more cautious, but also more curious. Because being a leader is not about avoiding discomfort. It's about using it well. What do I mean? It's about asking questions intentionally, strategically. And curiosity allows leaders to stay present in complexity instead of rushing past it. Because curiosity reduces the speed of the conversation. Curiosity requires that a space of reflection is created. And many people avoid that because that makes them feel uncomfortable. And here's another question for you. What discomfort are you avoiding by staying in certainty rather than inquiring? And this is a question you have to ask yourself. When you feel that you are in that meeting, that you have that burning question, but you avoid to ask. So again, when in that moment in time, ask yourself, what discomfort are you avoiding by staying in certainty rather than inquiring, by staying quiet instead of stepping into curiosity? Let's analyze a little bit now about curiosity and presence. Because one of the clear signals of leadership presence is attention. We all love that leader that shows, that is listening to you, that leans in to pay more attention. We all love that leader that is not talking all the time, not explaining all the time, but listening with intent. When a leader is genuinely curious, people feel it. People really feel it. Because the leader is not waiting to respond. They are actually listening. And here I can share with you a personal story. In my very first date with my husband, my actual husband, one thing that really attracted me to him was that I realized that he was really listening to my stories. And you know, we women, we talk a lot, most of the cases, but he was not listening just to be nice to me. He was listening. And I mentioned to him this after. And he said to me, well, you know, as a doctor, listening is very important in our relationship with our patients. Because in most cases, patients do not know how to explain well how they feel, or their perception of how they feel is not so accurate. So we need to listen attentively so we can read in between the lines and create and analyze what is actually happening with that particular patient. So you see this example, you can bring it to any high stakes conversation and to any conversation. We need to be able to talk less and listen more, and listen with curiosity and ask questions with intention. We have to stop and we have to really flag ourselves when we are listening to respond, not to understand. Because especially when there's pressure, our brain puts itself in the fight or flight mode and we stop listening actively. So we need to be very grounded and present to see to perceive when that is triggered in us, then we have to stop and say to ourselves internally, be grounded, be present, start listening. And a good way of being present is by asking questions. But again, questions with the intention to really understand, not only to support your point and position yourself. Presence alone changes the quality of the conversation because people speak more clearly, they think more carefully, they take more responsibility. When you're present, you show to your audience that you are here, that you care. And this is another thing that when we give ourselves that space to be grounded, to be listening, we don't need to answer all the questions immediately. Give yourself that 1, 2, 3 seconds to process what it was you were asked, to process what someone said before giving out your input, your opinion. And that, instead of what many people think, that if I don't answer immediately, people might feel that I don't know, that I don't have authority, that I'm weak. The perception, what you pass on, is completely different. It's the opposite, actually. At the moment you allow that space to think, to reflect before saying something, it shows that you're present, it shows that you're listening, it shows that you care. And it shows that you're not afraid of silence. You're not afraid to take that few seconds to absorb and to say something that will matter, not just saying as a reaction. Think about that. And here's a question that I want to ask you for you to reflect when you are under pressure. When was the last time you were fully present in a conversation without preparing your response? And that serves not only for difficult conversation, high stakes conversation, for any conversation. Sometimes when I'm observing people interaction in social gatherings even, I realize clearly, and I invite you to observe that there's not really a dialogue happening there. What's happening is people stating, they are giving statements. Nobody's listening to each other, really. Nobody is really asking to understand. They are asking to make their point. So nobody's really present. Unfortunately, in our world right now, this is one of the biggest handicaps we have as a society. We rush through things. We do not take the time to observe what's around us. As they say, taking the time to smell the flowers. And what happens is it's affecting directly the quality of our conversation and quality of our results. And we are not having real dialogues. Let's bring back dialogues. Another topic here, curiosity under pressure. Curiosity under pressure is a real challenge. I have explained a little bit before. Because let's be honest, curiosity is easy when things are calm, when there's time, when the stakes are low. But the real test of leadership curiosity is pressure. When time is short, when expectations are high, when eyes are watching. That is when curiosity becomes a choice, not a trait. And that requires practice. Ask yourself, in your next high pressure moment, what would it take to choose curiosity anyway? What would it take for you to choose be curious? So no matter how much pressure you have, you decide, I'm going to be curious, what you would have to do yourself? How would you have to prepare yourself to found that ground, to be present and say, no matter what, I will ask questions intentionally. I will give myself this time, this space to ask questions. I will not answer immediately as a reaction. I will give time for reflection, seconds, 3 seconds. But in a pressure environment, that might feel eternity. So this is why people are afraid of that gap of silence. Think about it and practice on that. Another frame here. Let's, in fact, reframe something. I want to offer you a simple reframe. Instead of asking, do I have time for curiosity right now? Based on the previous question that I asked you, do I have time for curiosity right now? Ask yourself instead, what is the cost of not being curious in this moment? You will see that will change your perspective, because you are avoiding maybe a conflict, you are avoiding to be in evidence, you might be avoiding me this one in the room that goes against the flow. So you are avoiding to have all the eyeballs on you. You might be avoiding to deaccelerate the speed, the dynamics of the meeting with your question. But then ask yourself, what is the cost of not being curious in this moment? I give you some examples of most common costs when the pressures are high. Misalignment. People are going just through things without making sure that everybody in the room is aligned. Resistance, because when everybody's pushing towards one direction and you come with a question that might, first stop them and invite them to consider different directions, you might find resistance. The pure execution of whatever is happening here, on the context, because things are not analyzed in depth, and then you do not ask those questions, you don't know if you will have the optimum results in the end. And erosion of trust. This is the biggest one, because when things go through, everybody's under pressure and decisions are made without in-depth analysis, and you as a leader start pushing towards a direction and you do not have the optimum results, and people are not participating on that decision, trust is the first one that goes in the drainage. So curiosity is not what slows leadership down. Correction does. Correction does. And one more question to practice. If you take nothing else from today, take this. In your next high pressure conversation, ask yourself, what question am I avoiding because it feels risky? What question am I avoiding because it feels risky? That question is usually the one that matters most. And before we close, here's what I want to leave you with. Curiosity does not weaken leadership. Curiosity does not weaken leadership. It strengthens it. Not because it makes leaders softer, but because it makes them sharper. In a world that rewards speed, certainty, and confidence, curiosity is an act of leadership maturity. Curiosity is an act of leadership maturity. And under pressure, choosing curiosity is not hesitation. It is a strategy. So I hope you have enjoyed this topic about curiosity. Become curious and leave your experience below. I'm curious about how you're dealing with difficult and high stakes conversation. And let's continue this conversation in this space. And if you enjoyed it, share, like, and share, because what's good needs to be shared.